Another day, another rural test. Today we're doing on the Google Pixel 6a. The A in my mind stands for affordable. Don't know if that's actually true. But if you're not familiar, we're going to test out this phone today, all while we explore, as per the usual. But, first things first. Coffee. Check. And welcome to Roosevelt Island, which is an island that is a part of the borough of Manhattan, but is a separate island from the island of Manhattan, and it sits in between that island and Long Island, which is where the boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn are. New York's a little complicated. I actually came from where I live in Brooklyn, over the Queensboro Bridge into Manhattan, and then we just took the tram from there to Roosevelt Island. It's a bit of a roundabout journey, but I've never been on the tram before, and I really wanted to try it. Originally in 1909, there was a trolley that went to the middle of that Queensboro Bridge to an elevator, and that's how people got down to this island. Eventually, a plan to bring the subway here led to that elevator being shut down and the tram being built as a temporary solution for getting to and from the island. But with more and more delays of the subway, New York City, and people kind of falling in love with the tram itself, the city decided to just make it permanent. And obviously there's been upgrades to the tram since then. Like, it's not the one from the early 1900s. I don't know if I would get on that tram. That sounds terrifying. Regardless, it's now a very unique way to travel here in New York City, and it's one of the only commuter aerial tramways in the country. We'll talk about this very unique island with a very unique, albeit at times dark, history in a bit. For now, let's talk about the styling on the new Google Pixel 6a. Okay, so firstly, you're gonna notice, well, it looks a lot like a Pixel 6 or a 6 Pro. It obviously shares the same design language as those two devices, and also as, well, for the foreseeable future, what Google will be using for Pixels, as we've already seen the Pixel 7 and 7 Pro, and they followed the same language. I have to admit though, I like the way it looks. I even have always liked the 6 and the 6 Pro. It feels very similar to the Pixel 6. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they have the same sides, whereas the Pixel 6 Pro has like a glossier frame that just feels a little bit different than these two. It's also lighter than both of those devices, obviously, and that's because it is small. It is the same 0.3 inches smaller in screen size compared to the Pixel 6 as the Pixel 6 is to the 6 Pro. It's like they planned it. Weird. Not only is it smaller than the other two 6 series Pixels, it's even smaller than the 5a. It's one of the smallest Pixels that Google has made in a while. But frankly, I really like the size. It just feels really good in the hand. It's large enough of a screen that I don't feel like I'm using like a tiny phone. It's good. Now the back looks and feels like glass, but it's actually plastic. I think Google did a good job here of making it feel a little more premium than, your average plastic back. Now we also have an IP67 rating compared to the 68 rating of the other two Pixel 6s. All that means is it can go down to 1 meter for up to 30 minutes compared to 1.5 meters for 30 minutes. To me, all I care about is that it will survive a quick dunk that I can quickly grab it back from. Now, something that is missing from this device that I know a lot of people are going to be upset about is the fact that this is the first A-series Pixel that doesn't have a headphone jack. I feel like by now we're all probably getting used to that, but I know someone's going to be very upset about that. I'm sorry. The device also comes in 3 colors. We have chalk, which is white, charcoal, which is their black one, and sage, which is what I have here, which is like a cool seafoam greeny kind of a color. I like it. So I've already learned that there's only like 2 coffee shops on this entire island, one of them being Starbucks. So I went to the other one, and I was a little nervous when I walked in, I'm not gonna lie, because it definitely has the vibe of like a college cafeteria. But I will say, the iced latte wasn't bad, wasn't amazing, but was better than I expected. Now I mentioned a bit of a dark past on this island, and this building was a big part of that. Now, firstly, the island was originally called Blackwell's Island after the family that originally owned it. It was sold to the city of New York in 1828 as part of the city's new plan to move lesser desirable facilities off of the main island of Manhattan and onto other islands. Now, the first thing built here was a penitentiary. 7 years later, this building was built as the New York City Lunatic Asylum and built out of the local stone on the island by the prisoners from the penitentiary. Eventually, throughout the rest of the 19th century, this island had a vast network of medical facilities, prisons, and other places to put quote-unquote undesirables. Blackwell's Island eventually became kind of known as the City of Asylums. In 1887, though, Nellie Bly, an investigative reporter who went undercover as a mentally ill patient and wrote a book titled 10 Days in a Madhouse about the abuse and ridiculous treatment that the patients were subjected to here in this facility. It actually received a ton of attention, and it changed the way that the Blackwell facilities, as well as many others, treated mentally ill patients forever. The Octagon, as it's called now, is the octagonal tower, which is the only remaining part of the original asylum, and it's now an apartment complex lobby. We'll get to how that happened a little bit later, as well as check out another place here with some significance that I've been wanting to see for a while. But while we're here, let's talk a little more about the Pixel 6a. So the screen on the 6a is a 20:9 aspect, 60 hertz display compared to the 90 of the 6 and the 120 of the 6 Pro. But it is an OLED screen, and the colors and contrast look just as good as the other two. The fingerprint is now in the display instead of on the back. Now, I will miss it on the back because I like to use it to like swipe down for notifications and things, and occasionally my finger still does go back there, but it makes total sense for the new design, and I'll deal. Now, we only have one model with 128 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM instead of the 8 and 12 that the 6 and the 6 Pro respectively have. And we also have the same chipset as the other two devices. We have the Google Tensor chipset, which is Google's own in-house designed silicon. And I have to admit, compared to some other devices I've used in this price range, this feels way snappier. So that's great.
So many geese.
And one of the other buildings built around the same time as the asylum that also has a pretty dark history is this one. Opened in 1856 and designed by James Renwick Jr., who was famous for designing St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue, and was originally a smallpox hospital. During that time, there was a lot of epidemics, including smallpox. And so the island was viewed as a good place to put the sick, because this is a time before germ theory was even a thought. And treatment was essentially just putting you here until your body got over the virus, or it didn't. In 1875, though, the hospital became a training center for nurses for the nearby City Hospital at the time here on the island. Which again, after that expose and in the beginning of the 20th century, the island started to shed its dark past and became a huge beacon of medical schools and training facilities, like this building eventually became. Now, just a short walk away from here, actually, was the first ever institute in the nation for pathological and bacterial research. It was the start of understanding how germs, bacteria, and viruses really worked. Seems a little appropriate to visit at the moment, I guess. Now, it was around this time, though, that Blackwell Island clearly needed to be rebranded, and it got a new name, Welfare Island. The lab and the now ruins of the hospital, sometimes called the Renwick Ruins, became New York City historical landmarks. And the ruin is currently going through a stabilization project. Once that's done, these chain link fences will supposedly be gone, and it'll be open to the public. But it'll always remain a ruin as a reminder of this island's dark past and transformation. It's actually really pretty, and we don't really have ruins in the US, so this is kind of the closest thing we got. But seems like a good place to talk about the Pixel 6a's cameras. We have two cameras, the same ultra-wide as the other two, but a different main camera with 12.2 megapixels instead of 50 megapixels, which on those models are actually binned to 12.5, and it has an f1.7 aperture instead of an f1.85 aperture. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because it was the same sensor in the 5A, the 5, the 4, the 4A, almost all of the previous Pixels. Clearly, a cost-saving measure, but considering how well those phones have all aged camera-wise, that might be fine. And you can obviously see for yourself throughout the video. Now, we also have a 2x button in the camera, even though there is no separate 2x telephoto. Tapping that utilizes a digital zoom, as does anything above that, and it uses what Google calls super res zoom, which is just a fancy way of saying their digital zoom uses more AI than most to create a better image. And I feel like at least at 2x, That's probably true, but you guys can be the judge of that. Along with that, we have a ton of software features for the camera, all carried over from the 6 and 6 Pro, like the ever-popular Magic Eraser to automatically detect and remove unwanted people from photos, which is still pretty impressive when it works well. Now, the only thing you don't get on the 6A that you get on the 6 and the 6 Pro in terms of camera software modes is motion mode, which allows you to create these like motion blur effects. Honestly, I never really used it, so I don't miss it. Now, both the rear cameras can shoot in 4K up to 60 frames per second, same as the rest of the Pixel 6 lineup. And we're also missing laser autofocus on the back, but the autofocus seems fine to me. And lastly, the front camera is the same as the Pixel 6 and can only do 1080p, 30 frames per second, just like the 6, instead of 4K 30 that the 6 Pro's front camera can do. Please be here when I get back. Welcome to Anything at All, a restaurant inside the Graduate Hotel on the Cornell Tech campus here, right next to the cafe that we were at earlier. But unlike the cafe, this restaurant was started in 2021 by 2 LA hospitality veterans. As far as I can tell, it's one of the few fancier spots on the island.
It's a very purple wing. It's delicious.
Also, I kind of just love that the name of this restaurant comes from a line in The Great Gatsby. Quote, "Anything can happen now that we've slid over this bridge. Anything at all." Now, you may be wondering at this point how Blackwell, Welfare Island, became Roosevelt Island. Well, in 1968, a plan was made to start building apartment buildings on the island, and by 1973, as the island was changing yet again, a new name was needed. Franklin Delano Roosevelt Island was chosen, and a couple years later, a memorial park in the honor of the former president was planned as well. Funny though, that park at the southern tip of the island, planned in 1975, opened in 2012. It took 37 years to finally give the name of the island a memorial park. Regardless, since the 70s, Roosevelt Island and its new identity yet again was born. Okay, so another software thing that isn't associated with the camera that stands out on the other Pixel 6 devices appears to be missing here, and that's the new version of voice to type. Now, the other Pixel 6 devices are just so much more accurate than any other device, and they can even put in punctuation for you, and you can clear what you said hands-free as well as send hands-free as well. It's just one of those things that I miss when I leave a Pixel 6. And I don't know if it's maybe just because I have an earlier build or what, but it's not on this phone, and I just don't understand why that's not here, considering it's the same processor, etc. Now, the other software thing that I do like about Pixels and is on this device is the call screening for phone calls. Basically, whenever you get a call, you can choose to screen the call, and Google Assistant will answer it for you and then transcribe whatever the caller says, which you can read in basically real time. And then you can choose to answer, send to voicemail, mark them as spam, or respond with text. Again, it's just one of those things that I miss when I leave and go to a different phone other than a Pixel 6. All right, now unlike the 5A 5G, there's no 5G in the name of this device, but it has 5G. But it is worth noting that it's sub-6 only for the unlocked model, and Verizon's model will also have millimeter wave, which is their faster network, but that'll cost $50 more. And AT&T has actually also confirmed that they will have a version for their millimeter wave network as well. Now, funny enough though, I seem to be getting 5G plus on AT&T even on this unlocked model, which is supposed to signify millimeter wave. But when I do a speed test, it's not really representative of millimeter wave here in New York City that I've seen on other devices. So who knows? Now, while we were at the restaurant, the battery died. And so here is my screen on time and my usage for today. Again, as always, keep in mind that this is a real world test. I use the camera a ton, especially today. It's also very hot today, which does affect the battery life a little bit, especially when you are using the video camera a lot. So just keep that in mind. And keep in mind, when you're looking at these numbers, you do have to subtract the night before because it does a full 24 hours. It doesn't do from the last full charge, which is annoying. And here is another day that was not a real world test day. That's a much more normal day. So you have something else to compare this to. Now, I did plug in to my little battery pack, and on this device we get 18 watt fast charging instead of 30 watt like you do on the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro. You are also missing wireless charging, if that's something you care about. I have to say, it actually feels a little bit to me like it lasts longer on this phone than those other two, which is kind of crazy to me because it doesn't really make any sense, but it's just how it's been feeling this last week I've been using. Okay, calling it a night. And I am fried. Like, I will be so surprised if I wake up tomorrow and my skin is not the same color as my shirt. I will be shocked. Regardless, let's wrap up our thoughts about the Pixel 6a. Now, honestly, it has a good screen, it has a decent battery, and it has a great camera. All the things that most people care the most about. And it does it for a good price. In fact, I would even say I have a hard time recommending any other phone under $500. Period. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Always appreciate hearing from you guys. Also let me know what you think about this video as well, the format. Always appreciate that too. I will leave a link below to the best price that I can find on the Pixel 6a for anyone who's curious about that. And if you're not already, please consider subscribing if you want more videos like this, and ding the bell also so you get notified when those new videos go live. As always though, regardless, thanks for watching. There's a low-flying plane and a helicopter together on this island, but you're still in a city. But now it's a helicopter. Another helicopter's coming. We'll wait. What is that? I just hear them. I don't see them. I think that's a plane. Who knew there was a lot of air traffic over Roosevelt Island? Not me. Now I know. You ever seen like lions on National Geographic? They're just hiding in the shade all day because it's too hot. Wait, it sounds a little pretentious calling myself a lion. You ever seen a sloth on National Geographic just hide in a tree all day because it's too hot? Yeah, that's gonna be me today. It is 95 degrees today in Fahrenheit. In Celsius, that's like 35. It's not a day to run around and film all day. I'll tell you that much. This was dumb. And now students talking. Can't blame them for that. That's normal. They should talk. It's healthy. Just wish they were talking right here. It was built as it's a seaplane. There's a seaplane going over me. And a bus. Seaplane and a bus. Can't win. Every mode of transportation just finds me wherever I am. And he's gonna stop there and keep his engine running just to annoy me. This island had a huge network. Seagulls, they're laughing at me. Mine, 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 mine. Go away. Another bus. The Octagon has its... Go away. College bro. I put a coffee can exhaust on my Infinity. I hear another whirling bird. There it is. So hot. So sweaty. I'm melting. Another helicopter. I somehow find places to film that are like directly in line for helipads. It's the second time I've done a video on an island in New York City where I've heard a helicopter every 4 minutes. Helicopter, god damn it. 4 minutes on the dot. Cue the barrage of sounds.